Right now, you feel certain you are looking at a screen. You can see the light, you can hear my voice. But physiologically, your brain has no direct access to the outside world. It is sealed inside a thick vault of bone, sitting in absolute darkness. Everything you will ever know about the universe arrives in that dark box as ambiguous electrical spikes traveling along nerve endings. These incoming sensory spikes don't come with labels. A cluster of electrical signals could be a massive object far away or a tiny object right in front of your eye. The raw sensation alone means almost nothing. To make sense of the chaos, the brain uses a mechanism called predictive coding. Take a look at this conceptual model. Instead of passively waiting for information, the higher levels of your cortex actively generate a top-down guess, a prior, about what is out there. It then uses the sensory organs at the bottom to check its work against reality. Notice how the downward prediction arrows widen, blocking the upward sensory flow. If the incoming electrical spikes match the brain's guess, the data is ignored. The only signals that are allowed to travel back up the chain are the parts the guess failed to anticipate. Neuroscientists call this unexplained residue a prediction error. Processing new data requires massive amounts of metabolic energy. So, according to Karl Friston's free energy principle, the brain operates under a strict biological imperative. It must constantly minimize these prediction errors, or surprise, to survive. What we experience as the objective, everyday world is simply the brain's most successful, error-minimized hypothesis. To manage this constant flow of guesses and errors, the brain applies a mathematical weighting system called precision. Think of precision as an internal volume knob that decides, moment to moment, whether to trust the top-down prediction or the bottom-up sensory evidence. When this system is working well, the high-precision prediction is incredibly useful. It allows you to effortlessly read terrible handwriting by using your brain's confident expectation of a word to override the messy ink on the page. But watch what happens in this data flow visualization when that volume knob is turned up too high. The top-down prior becomes massive and heavy. It crushes the bottom-up evidence entirely. The system stops updating. It becomes permanently deaf to contradictory information. We typically describe depression and anxiety as deeply entrenched moods. Through the predictive coding lens, they are mechanical failures, pathologically rigid beliefs. A depressed brain anticipates futility. An anxious brain anticipates threat, filtering sensory reality to confirm predictions. Deep psychological suffering operates as a literal data processing trap. The mind is locked inside an unyielding cage of its own rigid predictions. This brings us to a compelling scientific framework for psychedelics, known as the REBUS model, or relaxed beliefs under psychedelics. It proposes a systemic intervention to break this exact cognitive trap. A psychedelic molecule binds to serotonin receptors, forcing a chemical override. It turns down the volume knob on the brain's highest level, most confident predictions. See how the hierarchy model shifts in response? As the heavy top-down block dissolves, the authority of the prediction is broken. Suddenly, massive amounts of bottom-up sensory errors are liberated, flooding upward through the system entirely unchecked. The normally strict controlled hierarchy collapses into a hot, anarchic state. Without rigid priors forcing the data into expected boxes, the brain's internal model becomes incredibly fluid. The resulting experience looks like a random delusion to an outside observer. Mechanically, it is the exact opposite. It is the raw, unfiltered experience of a brain suddenly forced to process the vast amounts of sensory data it normally ignores. This computational mechanism maps perfectly onto a psychedelic trip. The brain normally imposes strong predictions to smooth out background visual noise into blank walls and flat surfaces. Strip away that smoothing prediction, and the visual noise self-organizes into geometric lattices and shifting spirals. The same logic applies to the profound sense of meaning users report. A patch of carpet or a simple piece of music suddenly carries more raw data than the brain can easily file away. Unabsorbed prediction error is experienced subjectively as the feeling that something is deeply, overwhelmingly significant. Push this mechanism to its limit, and it targets the highest level prediction the brain makes, the continuous, bounded sense of I. The ego itself is an internal prior. Relax that ultimate prior completely, and the boundary separating the self from the external environment stops computing. This is the physiological trigger for ego dissolution. The spiritual hallmarks of the psychedelic experience are generated by stripping away the brain's baseline reality filtering mechanism. The long-term clinical utility of psychedelics centers on the neural plasticity that persists long after the immediate sensory effects have subsided. The compound destabilizes existing rigid predictions, allowing them to be audited and updated for the first time in years. This open state carries distinct risks. A competing scientific framework called REBUS, Altered Beliefs Under Psychedelics, points out that a completely unstuck predictive model is highly fragile. In this hyperplastic state, flawed predictions can easily be strengthened, or entirely false insights can be improperly validated. This is exactly why clinical therapists rely heavily on setting, and integration. These are not mystical traditions. They are strict structural protocols required to safely guide and rebuild the predictive model while it is vulnerable. The pharmaceutical intervention provides the physiological opportunity for change. The actual healing occurs through the active reorganization of the predictive model while the brain remains in this heightened state of flexibility. Every detail of your current environment, the textures, the distances, the depth, is a high-precision simulation running inside a lightless vault of bone. Psychedelics offer a rare, fleeting mechanism to turn down the confidence of that simulation. They let the unedited world back in, proving that even our most rigid realities are capable of being rewritten.